Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All together, please. Om jñāna-timirandasya ganandana salakaya chakshurun militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Yukta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prajana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karana Sindhu Dhina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapcha Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Prishabhana Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So reading from Srimad Bhagavad-Gītā as it is, translation and commentary is Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Today's verse is number 10, correct? Of chapter 15, chapter entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person. So please repeat. Utkrāmantaṁ, sthitam, vāpi, bhuñjānam, guṇānvitam, vimūḍhā, nānupaśyanti, paśyanti, jñāna-cakṣuṣaḥ. Okay, word for word, please repeat. Utkrāmantam, quitting the body. Sthitam, situated in the body. Vāpi, either. Bhuñjānaṁ, enjoying. Or. guṇa-anvitam, under the spell of the modes of material nature. Vimūḍhā, foolish persons. Never. Anupaśyanti, can see. Paśyanti, can see. jñāna-cakṣuṣaḥ, those who have the eyes of knowledge. Translation, Srila Prabhupada. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Please repeat. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of material nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Purport, Srila Prabhupada. The word jñāna-cakṣuṣaḥ is very significant. Without knowledge, one cannot understand how a living entity leaves his present body, nor what form of body he is going to take in the next life, nor even why he is living in a particular type of body. This requires a great amount of knowledge understood from Bhagavad-Gītā and similar literatures heard from a bona fide spiritual master. One who is trained to perceive all these things is fortunate. Every living entity is quitting his body under certain circumstances. He is living under certain circumstances, and he is enjoying under certain circumstances, under the spell of material nature. As a result, he is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power to understand their change of body and their stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. Those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body and is changing its body and enjoying in different ways. A person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. Therefore, those who are highly developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give their knowledge to the people in general, for their conditional life is very much troublesome. They should come out of it and be Krishna conscious and liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world. Jai. Om Jnana-timirandasya ganandana salakaya Mukam karochi vātālam pangam laitegirim yadkripatamaham vande Shri Guru Ninatarinam. Utkrāmantaṁ sthitam vāpi bhuñjānam guṇa-anvitam vimūḍhā nānupaśyanti paśyanti jñāna-cakṣuṣaḥ. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. One whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Yes. So the yoga of the Supreme Person. So as we said before, in the first 6 chapters of the Gita, karma kanda is taken care of, with an accent on bhakti. Where the middle 6 chapters is bhakti kanda, upasana kanda. So now the last 6 chapters, they are jnana kanda. So they're very much Upanishad orientated. The Upanishads, I once looked it up, it was on Wikipedia, so I don't know how reliable it is, but in Wikipedia it said that in the Vedas there are 1600 Upanishads. But basically what an Upanishad is a discussion, usually between disciple and guru, that points towards transcendence rather than involvement in the material world. Upanishads, they talk to Brahman. And we saw in chapter 13, Nature, the Enjoyer Consciousness, Krishna first said, these are the items of knowledge, and anything that's not contained there, that's ignorance. And then he talked about how the super soul is in the material world and how the living entities are expanded everywhere. But then, as in the Upanishad system, he pointed that you must look beyond that, Arjuna. You must look beyond the living entities to see the spiritual platform. Because the living entities, they're various and they're all different. Everyone has a different material body, male, female, animal, plant, whatever. But look beyond that variegatedness and see the Brahman, the spiritual platform. So then 14th chapter came along, and Krishna explained about the 3 modes of material nature. And then he said, Arjuna, look beyond that. Because the 3 modes of material nature mentioned in this verse, they put the living entity under a spell, whereby he thinks, I'm this material body, I'm a product of this material environment, my happiness is in this material world, I should try and find it, I should avoid unhappiness, and I should arrange things and for my happiness. But then Krishna said, no, Arjuna, look beyond the three modes. And then he finished the chapter by saying, Brahmano pratishtaham. I am that Brahman. And that is what you should be looking for. And we know that, right? You're all devotees. Krishna conscious means to be conscious of the root. So this chapter, the yoga of the Supreme Person, the root is further explained by Krishna. Krishna explains that this material world can be compared to a banyan tree. But normally the trees in this world, the roots are downward. Right? They're in the earth. But he said this material banyan tree, the root is upward. And we all know who that root is. That root is Krishna. If you remember the 10th chapter, in the Chaturshloki, the four most important, or the summary of the Gita, Krishna said, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matak sarvam pravartate. I am the source of all material and spiritual creation. That's the two departments. There is the spiritual creation, where everything is made of spirit. And then there is the material creation, which is a mixture of matter and spirit, right? We have a material body, but we have a spirit soul inside. A fish has a spirit soul, it has a material body. Everything in this material world is a mixture. But because we're attached to enjoying this material world, thinking that we are a material product, we become bound in the law of karma, lokoyam karma bandhana. We perform activities and we get a reaction, either good or bad. So Krishna says that is a problem. And this is the same point that's going on in this verse, that many manu-dharma, it's called in Sanskrit, man-made dharma, they think that the living entity, manu-dharma, man-made religion. Some tribe gets together and they speculate about the nature of the Supreme. Maybe the sun is the Supreme. And then they write some traditional stories, and then they have some patriarchs in the past, and they wrote down what they say, and it becomes a whole body of works, and it's passed off as religion, the word of God. But anyone that investigates the history sees that it's very much manodharma, man-made. But of course the priestly class, they present their scriptures and traditions and ideas as being perfect, because that's their meal ticket. They're the priests. So if they let it be known that this is imperfect knowledge that has been put together by man, imperfect knowledge of the Supreme or the material creation, then so usually these manodharma, they're very heavy into ritual. You know, they have their man-made book and their man-made ideas in this book, and they bring it out on certain days and worship it. And then all the congregation think, oh, this book. Of course, they're too busy trying to support their families to read it. But if you read manodharma, you become more and more confused. Yes. But when you read the Vedas, this is scientific knowledge. And an honest person, as it said here, somebody who's trained in knowledge, somebody who's taking the advice of a bona fide spiritual master, he becomes purified in consciousness, and he becomes a fit person for receiving the spiritual understanding. So the Vedas, that is not manodharma. That is Apurusheya Brahman. That is the Brahman, the spiritual revelations of the Supreme Lord. And here we have the Supreme Lord himself speaking. So those that are in ignorance, as it is said here, they can't understand this. And they have their traditional ideas. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body. So that is one thing, right? You can go on the internet and they will, you can look up near-death experience. People sometimes they have an operation or an accident and they leave their body. So we understand that from the Gita, that the person is the material body, this gross body, and he also has a subtle body. When we look at a person, we see actually four things, if you're trained in knowledge. There's the gross body, that's the sthula sarira, and then there is the mental body, called linga sharir in Sanskrit, and that is pervading the gross body. So just like, for example, if you have a sponge, so the sponge can be dry, but also it can also absorb water. So the water will go throughout the sponge. So the subtle body is pervading the gross body. So that's two elements, gross body, subtle body. Then there is the soul that is supplying the consciousness, because matter is unconscious. As I said at the beginning, this material creation is a mixture of matter and spirit. Matter is unconscious, spirit is conscious. So this body is a mixture of matter and spirit, if you like. The unconscious part, you can say, is the hair. You can cut the hair, you don't need an anesthetic, or the nails. But because the subtle body is not within the nails or the hair, it's within the blood and nervous system. So that consciousness, under the supervision of Paramatma, pervades this body. And so they're the four items. We have the gross body, the subtle body, we have the individual soul, and the interaction of the individual soul with the gross and subtle body is supervised by the Paramatma. And so the Paramatma is, as we saw earlier, I was explaining in that 14th chapter, he is upadrishta anumanta. Upadrishta means overseer. He's seeing the whole situation. He is seeing my behavior, my activity, my desire, and he's doing the same for every living entity in the whole creation. So he is supervising the interaction of all the living entities with the material energy. And he is giving the results accordingly, as explained in the Brahma Samhita, that he is supervising the karmic results. Yan kama krodha kamaya. I didn't bring my Brahma Samhita, but he explains that he supervises the reactions of all the living entities, no less in the case of Lord Brahma than in the little ant. Everyone, as Krishna says in the Gita, lokoyam karma bandhana. Everyone in this material creation is bound by karma. According to your action, you will get reaction. So, people without knowledge, they think, oh, action and reaction, that only applies in the physical world. That applies to asteroids in space. Or when I get a lever, I put a certain amount of pressure here and I can lift this cement block here, action and reaction. They think that it doesn't apply to me and my activities. I can perform any action, and by my wit and intelligence, I can get away with it. So the criminal, he always maybe wants to rob a bank, but he thinks I'll get away with it. I'll get no reaction. I'm too clever. But in the material world, everything is bound by action and reaction. So even if the police don't catch you, in the future, you will get the fruit of that activity. Similarly, if you perform good activities, you give in charity to good people, to necessary situation, you will get your reaction in the future. But this will bind you to the cycle of birth and death, which is anartha, unwanted. We don't want to, as Prabhupada pointed out a couple of times in the purport, it's very troublesome, Prabhupada used the word, because you're taking a body and then you're quitting it. You're taking a body and you're quitting it. And so the cycle of a body is birth, then it grows, second. Third, it maintains. You become an adult. Then you produce byproducts. A man and a woman, they have a child, byproducts. And then number 5, it dwindles, old age. And then death. 6 changes: birth, growth, maintenance, byproducts, dwindling, death. So this is very troublesome. Who wants to grow old? Everyone wants to stay 15, 16, 17. But nobody wants to become 70. But time, kalosmi aham, pushes us along in this life. Why? Because we're bound in this cycle of action and reaction. Why? Because we are fixed on trying to enjoy this material body in relationship to the material energy. And this is the point that Krishna is teaching in this section. They cannot understand how the living entity can quit the body, leave the body. Oh, that's what I was explaining before. So I saw a couple of, on the YouTube, I was looking at some near-death experience people, and they had these talking heads, and they're trying to explain, maybe it's a hallucination, maybe it's a this, maybe it's a that. But actually we understand from Vedic knowledge, if your eyes are trained with knowledge, we know that somehow or other the subtle body, which contains the consciousness, which in the material condition is called sthitaṁ, the subtle body left the material body. Maybe because of the operation or some accident or some shock. And it is explained in the yogic literature that that subtle body is tied to the gross body. And it can leave, for example, when we dream at night, we may fly in the sky and go to different regions, or we may go to hell or something. But then we come back, we wake up and we think, oh, it was just a dream. So we live in that subtle world during dreaming sleep. So those that are trained in knowledge and understand that the living entity is not just the material body, but he's the subtle body which contains the consciousness, and the consciousness is the emanation of the soul, just like the sun is emanating light, so the soul is emanating consciousness, and that is in the subtle body, mind, intelligence, false ego, and that is all supervised by the Paramatma, Krishna. He is overseer, permitter. Everything, sutre mani gana iva. Everything is resting upon Krishna. So those that are trained in knowledge through the scripture, through the bona fide spiritual master, they can understand many things like that. Like I'm watching that short video on near-death experience, and then there's also sometimes they have people who who, like a young boy in Sri Lanka, he remembers in his past life his mother and father lived in this village and they had that name. And then they take the boy there and those people are there. And they say, oh, we had a son and he died in an accident when he was 8 years old. And so on and so. So those that have knowledge, this is not very bewildering. But if you have no knowledge, and you're trying to understand everything as a chemical reaction or a physical or biological reaction within the body, you just become... And these talking heads, possibly it's a psychological reaction, possibly it's chemicals in the brain. When the child grows up, he doesn't have these experiences, so maybe it's something in the water. So that is their knowledge is maybe this, maybe that. And because the people who are listening to them don't have any knowledge, they think, maybe this, maybe that. And then they turn the channel and watch the cricket score. But there's no knowledge, because they're not going to the Vedas, they're not going to the Guru Parampara, they're not going to spiritual master, they're not having the basics of material and spiritual life explained to them. Yes, so they cannot understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. Yes. Well, Krishna gives a very good example. Yes, how we can understand. Everyone has a particular body. So, if you look at text number 8, the living entity, that's the spirit soul in the material world, carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. Right? The body is not permanent. It dwindles and dies. So just like the air, when it passes over a nice garden with roses and flowers, the air picks up the scent, and then the air crosses the rubbish dump and it picks up that odor, so on and so forth. But the air is different from the odor. The air is carrying the odor. So that is the position of the living entity's consciousness. According to his endeavors, he is reacting with certain parts of the material energy. For example, say he becomes a drug addict, or he becomes attached to drugs. So he takes drugs. So his consciousness, he becomes addicted to drugs. So his consciousness becomes carrying the odor of the drugs. So that means tamagun. He'll go into ignorance, he'll become lazy, he'll become depressed, he may become psychotic, he may not keep himself clean, he may lose morality, he may become a thief to maintain his drugs. But then the same person, by good association, he may work in a hospital as a doctor, helping people, doing his best for them. He may give in charity, so on and so forth. And so he becomes purified in consciousness. So he is on the path of punya, you can say. He's performing good activities. His consciousness is going over a flower garden. The other person is going over a rubbish dump. And so when we look at somebody, we can have a guess. We can't, unless you're a great rishi, you must be careful when you judge people. You can imagine, oh, this person is very handsome, intelligent, healthy. So that person is living in this body, in this situation, because of some good karma. But then this person is penniless, he's got some mental problems, he's living in a very bad condition. We can understand that that is the result of bad karma. He's being carried in that way. Oh, this is a tiger. So in the previous life, maybe he liked to eat raw meat or something like that. Maybe he was a Kali worshipper, so he became a tiger. so on and so forth. There are 8,400,000 categories of life, the Vedas explain us. Okay, this person, this soul is a porpoise, a dolphin. So maybe in the past life they loved to go surfing. Every day they went to the ocean and they were surfing on the ocean. And they were thinking, I love swimming in the ocean and riding the waves. So in the next life, they become a fish, they become a dolphin, or a killer whale, or something. So according to the desire and the punya, pap, and so on, very complicated, because we're performing activities with mind and body and speech, we get a certain result. So we can understand. Also, like you're all sitting here interested in Bhagavad-Gita, so we can understand in your past life you've been interested in spiritual knowledge. So now you're in Vrindavan and you're interested in Bhagavad-Gita, you're seeing Radha and Krishna, some bhav is in the heart, and you're appreciating, very nice, good spiritual knowledge. This is a sign of you're living this life, we can understand, because of previous activities. So that reawakening of previous spiritual endeavor in this life, that is under the supersoul too. Because the supersoul is observing the desire of the living entity and is fulfilling it. The man is in his home with the wife and kids and he's praying to supersoul, now I'm going to sleep, please keep us safe in the night. But then in the street there's a man and he's praying to God, he said, I need to steal money from this house to pay for my kids' education. So he's praying to supersoul, please let me steal some money. And then the man in the house is praying, please may I not be stolen from. So to be Krishna, to be Paramatma is very difficult job. So there's all this interaction between the living entities and it's all being supervised by supersoul. But basically, everyone is getting what they deserve. Basically, karma phal. It is called parabdha and aparabdha karma. It's explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that we perform activities and that is like planting a seed. And that seed will sprout and give a fruit in the future. So the parabdha karma is that which is manifest. We're all got male bodies. But some people, their parabdha karma may be that they have a female body. And then aparabdha karma means not yet manifest, which is lying in seed, it's not sprouted. Just like now is haryalite, the greenery is growing, the seeds are sprouting. But they may have been lying dormant in the earth during the hot season. But now the rain is there, so the conditions are right for it to sprout. So sometimes we see that, right? For example, in the political sphere, people may become a big leader in politics and they're in a big high position. Just like in Afghanistan now, the whole country is in turmoil, right? So I'm the Prime Minister of Afghanistan and the Americans are backing me up. But then the mad president, senile old man, he decides, I'm taking the army in one, so I head for the hills. Take the money and run. So parabdha karma, he was he was a big man, right? Going to big meetings, his own aeroplane, flying to the United Nations. But then one day, the karma changed, the fruit of past activities, and he's hiding in a cave with all his traveler's checks or something. They don't have traveler's checks now. But so this is karma. It comes, it elevates us like a wave, and then it throws us up. So this is, as Prabhupada said in the purport, it's very troubling. But somebody who's in the eyes of knowledge can see this, can see it. This is the karma phal. Aparabdha karma is being generated. So the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, because they don't understand the person is a spirit soul. So we're spirit soul, we can leave this body permanently. Just like you can leave a motor car. You park your motor car and you leave it. So the motor car, the yantra, the body is a vehicle for the soul. And it can leave. But it leaves, this is an important point, it leaves with the subtle body. Try to understand this point. That, yes, we change the gross body, right? We go from, say, a male body to a tiger body. But we don't change the subtle body. That always stays with the soul. So that subtle body carries the karmas, the desire, the aparabdha karma. That carries it, and it manifests in the gross body. You understand? So, okay, in this life, I was a hunter, and I liked to eat meat, and I used to go hunting in the forest. So next life, I become a tiger. And there you can hunt, and you can eat the meat, and you won't get indigestion or cancer. So, material nature is fulfilling your desire. But it's your body is being given to you, but the subtle body remains. But the subtle body transforms. As Krishna explained there in the 8th sloka, that according to your association, if you associate with pap, bad activities, your future will be down. If you're a thief, you're going to end up in troublesome situations. But if you're a good person, materially, you're going to elevate, even up to Swagaloka. So, without knowledge, the variety of all the living entities and why one man is president 1 minute and he's thrown down the next, this is all very bewildering. But so, somebody who is jñāna-cakṣuṣaḥ, having spiritual knowledge, by grace of Krishna and spiritual master and the Shastra, he can understand all this. But most of all, he understands that this is anartha, under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. So, we'll finish at this point. Those that have spiritual knowledge, they can understand. They have insight, they have intuition by the grace of Krishna, Super Soul. They can understand what is going on. But as Prabhupada, and this is very important, isn't it? You see that? Therefore, those who are highly developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give this knowledge to the people in general. For their conditional life is very troublesome. They should come out of it and be Krishna conscious and liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world. This is the real point. Yes, we may understand, we may gain knowledge by grace of Shastra, Guru, Sadhu. We may gain knowledge about the material world. But the thing is, we should act to give this knowledge to people, or else they'll remain in the cycle of birth and death. So, Kali Yuga, Lord Chaitanya has come and he's given us a very potent system. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. that is kirtan. But also shravanam, that is, we should hear the shastra. We should hear the words of the acharyas, the sadhus. Then kirtan, that means to describe. We can chant the glories. Then smaranam, we can practice smaranam, remembering the name, form, the pastimes of Krishna. And then padasevanam, we can serve Krishna, we can serve with the gross body, we can do manak seva, and those that are uttamadhikaris, they can serve on the spiritual platform. Then archanam, we can install deity according to Shastra and worship the deity. Archanam Vandanam, we can offer prayers like Brahma Samhita, prayers of Queen Kunti. The Bhagavatam is full of prayers, or like Lord Brahma's prayers, prayers of the Vedas, Vandanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyams. Then we can adopt the attitude that I'm the servant of the Supreme. As we become purified and we realize Krishna, we can adopt the attitude, yes, I'm the servant of the Supreme. As Krishna says in other sloka, Mavaibangsa jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. The living entities of this material world are my part and parcels eternally. But mana shastra indriyani prakritistani kashati. But because of the mind, they're struggling. So by the Navavida Bhakti, by these 9 processes, we lose attachment to enjoying this material world. And we adopt this dasya, this basic idea that I'm not the enjoyer of this material world, but I am the servant of the Supreme. Just like I was saying at the beginning of the class, Krishna gives the example that this world is like a banyan tree. And it's very entangling. You know, a banyan tree, of course, is very huge and complex. So Krishna says you become free of this material banyan tree by the weapon of detachment. So detachment comes from knowledge. If you understand that this banyan tree is only going to give you birth, death, old age and disease, then you become detached. And if simultaneously you understand the spiritual world, and that is the eternal kingdom of Krishna, that is purely spiritual, that is free of material time, material woe is there, gone, we're living eternally in the spiritual world, then you become detached from this lower position. So dasya, that dasya bhav, that is the entrance to the spiritual platform. Material world, we serve ourselves. But in the spiritual platform, we serve the Supreme. That is bhajan, out of loving sentiment. So dasya bhav. Then sakya. Sakyam doesn't mean sakya bhav in the sense of sthayi bhav in this context. It means that as you serve the Supreme and you realize Krishna more and Krishna's devotees, then you feel friendship. You feel companionship. Just like a man, he has a chauffeur. So at the beginning, the chauffeur is the servant of the boss. But then he gets to know the boss, he becomes friend of the boss. The boss is seeing him every day, he's driving him here and there. They become close friends. So they develop more than just dasya, but sakya. So as a devotee progresses in realization, he has friendly feeling to Krishna because he realizes Krishna within the heart. So then Atma Nivedanam, number 9. Then he surrenders everything to Krishna. Because he realizes, Atma, myself, I belong to Krishna. Mavaibangsa jiva loke, jiva bhut, I belong to Krishna. So this is bhava. Then he just thinks, this is spiritual consciousness. So that is the solution. to all this taking a body, living, taking another body, living, and so those that have knowledge, they have an obligation to chant and to spread the chanting and to spread the knowledge. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So we'll finish on that point. Any question? Yeah, go ahead.
Various process to come out of this material world.
Excuse me?
You have discussed here
Yeah.
that various processes to get out of this material world, like devotional service, particularly. And but the people in general are lacking that what is the aim of their life.
Yes.
When they are lacking the aim of life actually, they don't know how to reach the aim of the life.
Well, they don't even consider, they may not even, it may never occur to them.
The aim of life is to achieve Kṛṣṇa actually, sthitaṁ actually.
Yes.
From where once gone cannot return to this material world.
Yes.
When they do not know, that's why they do not perform this devotional service
Yes.
properly. Once they are clarified, their aim of the life is to reach the Kṛṣṇa consciousness or the Kṛṣṇa.
Yes.
Then they follow each and everything actually. How to come out this material world actually. From
Yeah.
three modes of material nature actually.
Yes.
From this karma-bandhan.
Yeah.
So they must know actually clearly what is the aim of the life. They are lacking the aim of life.
Yes. So therefore Vedanta Sutra, it starts, Atato Brahma Jignas. Now you're a human, Brahma Jignas, inquire into Brahman.
Here this translation, the word foolish, this is very much important. The foolish are those who do not understand the aim of the life.
Yes. But we should be compassionate because if we look at our own life, we didn't know if there was an aim to life other than just enjoying this world, did we? But somehow or other, we got a Bhagavad-Gītā, we associated with a devotee, that devotee explained to us. So, what is that verse? Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prashadibai Bhakti Latabit. So the living entity is wandering, like you say, from life to life, but somehow or other he gets Guru Krishna Prashadibai, he gets he gets the association of a sadhu, and then he starts to think, that sadhu, he's saying intelligent things, he gave me a good book, there's something of value in it, right? So that's the beginning of his spiritual life, right?
In text number 18, chapter number 9, it is clearly described, Gati-karta Prabhu Sakshi Nivasa Saranam Swara Prabha Prada Sthanam Nidhanam Idam Adhyam. Translation: I am the God, the sustainer, the master, the witness, the abode, the refuge, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and the inhalation, and the basis of everything, the resting place, and the eternal seat.
Yeah. Which verse is that?
18.
18.
18, chapter 9.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, so that's the point. That instead of becoming under the spell of enjoying in the material world, we should develop spiritual consciousness through Shravanam Kirtanam. And then we'll go to the spiritual world. It's as simple as that. Because, just like I was explaining, if you want to eat raw meat and be a hunter, you'll become a tiger, because that's what you're associating and desiring. If you want to swim in the ocean, you may become a dolphin, right? Or sometimes some people, they may be bird watchers, for example, right? Bird watchers, they get cameras and they love to watch how the birds live. So they may become birds in the next life because that's what they're associating. So the same principle is there in Krishna consciousness. If we study Gita, we read Bhagavatam, we study the Vedas, we read the writings, the acharyas, we find a bona fide spiritual master to guide us, then we go to the spiritual platform. And therefore we have sadhana bhakti, we perform Ekadashi Vrat. Today is Ekadashi. Mahadwadashi, is it? Ekadashi. So that is very purifying, good for developing spiritual consciousness. And then we worship Krishna on Janmashtami, we chant regularly, so we awaken the soul. So some people are awakening desire to be a tiger or a dolphin or a devata. What is that sloka? We discussed it. Yanti deva vrata devam pritrin yanti pritri vrata yanti bhuteja bhuteja yanti mam yajinopi mam. Those that worship the devas, they go to the devas. Those that worship the forefathers, they go to the forefathers. Those that worship ghosts and spirit, right? Sometimes people worship Kali, or, with animal and human sacrifices. Not bona fide, but some people practice black magic. They sell their soul to the devil. So then they become ghosts and bhutas and rakshasas in the next life. But yantimam yachinopimam, those that worship me, they come to me. So it's free will. Oh, that's right. We should always remember that we have free will. And it's how we use our free will give us a certain result. Like some people, they really want. I remember once, many years ago, I was studying musical theory, and you were a very good musician, and he taught me musical theory. He gave me books to study, and he told me. He said he taught many people music. He was a very expert musician, and he told me. He said he remembered one trumpet player. And this was a student, and he really wanted to play the trumpet. But he didn't have a good ear. He couldn't, he didn't have a good sense of tone or pitch. And he said he knew other students that were very good, very quickly, but they didn't try. They didn't endeavor. But he said this person, he really wanted to be a good trumpet player. So he practiced and he practiced and he practiced. And my friend said that eventually he became a very good trumpet player. He performed the tapasya. He practiced. He was fixed. He wanted to play trumpet. He didn't have a good ear. But gradually he got better and better. So Lord Brahma, when he awoken to consciousness, he heard the word tapa. He wanted to know, what is my situation? Where is my source? Tapa, tapasya. So the first word is tapasya. So what we want to achieve is available, but we have to perform tapa. Now that doesn't mean to say we have to be like Hiranyakashipu. Eat 5 chickpeas a day for 100 days. No, our tapasya is to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, to avoid material food, material, always take nice prasad, asat sangi tyagi, don't associate with overly materialistic people, associate with devotees, study the Shastra every day, develop mode of goodness, be truthful, tolerant, helpful to others, compassionate, right? And then we go to the spiritual world. We don't have to stand on one leg for... Now, but some people do that. I've seen, of course, we've seen. I remember I used to go every Ekadashi and do circumambulation of Govardhan Hill. And there was one sadhu there, and I used to go every Ekadashi. And so I just wander around. But there was one sadhu there, and he had 108 stones, and he would stand on one leg. You know, he had some way of, and he had his beads. And he would chant one mala, and then one obeisance, you know? So you can imagine, I don't know what mantra he was chanting, but to do that, and then maybe 108 stones, then he'd go and move that. So that's a great austerity, isn't it? Right? But so that takes great determination. But okay, but Lord Chaitanya in Kali Yuga has said just chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So even if we can't do everything else, we should always keep chanting. And then eventually we'll develop bhava. But the thing is, at the same time, we should give this knowledge to others. That's very pleasing to Krishna.
That's why we are preaching in the temple.
Huh?
That's why we are preaching in the temple.
Yeah, that's why we keep the temple, right? That's why we have kirtan in the temple. That's why we're distributing Mahaprasad and books, so people have a chance, right? If you look everyone's life, I remember myself, I got Prabhupada's Gita. Well, my professor told me, he was a professor of Oriental philosophy, so he gave me a list of books to read. So one of those books was Bhagavad-Gita. So I read 2 versions of Bhagavad-Gita. Then I got Prabhupada's Gita by mail order. You know, send off and it comes in a week or 2. So because of that Bhagavad-Gita, then I was very impressed. So then I started chanting. So we should always understand that. If we look at our own life, there was a time when we didn't know anything about spiritual matters, or we knew very little. But because of Prabhupada translating, the devotees distributing knowledge, so we have that obligation, right, to give that knowledge to others. Just like a doctor. A doctor, if he has medical knowledge, he should help people, right? If he doesn't, then he's not really performing his duty. So the duty of a devotee is to become a good devotee himself, and then try to give help to others spiritually. So yes, Prabhupada said that many times. One time he was challenged, Prabhupada said, why you're talking about chanting and renunciation, but why are you making a big temples with big deities and all this? And Prabhupada, we're doing it for you. Because unless we have a temple, you won't come here. So, yes, devotee, Madhavendra Puri, he can sit under a tree and do his bhajan very peacefully. But we are endeavoring to spread knowledge. So we have to print books. We have to pay the bill. We have to pay the electric bill. We have to open so many endeavors. That's the world. Okay, any other question? Everyone satisfied? Okay, thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada Bhagavad-Gita Sadhu Sangha Ke Jai.